My name is Kate Whitfield, and I'm a principal with Alta Planning and Design. I'm a professional engineer and urban planner based in Ottawa. This video was created to help people looking for jobs in Canada to connect with CITE members who are working in the field of transportation, engineering, and planning. Without conferences and other chances to meet in person, it's important to create these opportunities to help people network in these times. We've invited people who are currently employed in the public and private sectors to come together for these informal chats. I also invited 3 job seekers to share something of interest to them. Hopefully, what comes out of these short talks is a sense of what transportation jobs are like in Canada, and for those looking for work, a better sense of what might interest them. And then a bonus element of hearing about interesting topics in transportation in Canada. And then some networking intel, some sort of job search tips. My hope is that some of the information shared here could be used by someone looking for work to better connect through LinkedIn or otherwise. Maybe something is said here that could open a door to a job. For more information on the people featured in this video, check out the YouTube page. Our hope is that new videos are released periodically over the next sort of few weeks and months. The CITE website has more information on how to get involved. So let's get going and see what the participants in today's episode have to share. I'd like to welcome everyone to the 3rd episode of CITE Career Connects. I'm going to go through a quick round of hellos before we dive in. I'll head to the 3 job seekers first. So Sarah, could you introduce yourself with your name and where you're located?
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Tremblay. I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia.
And Chris, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Chris, and I'm located in Toronto, Ontario.
And Umang, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Umang Bhanushali, and I'm located in Ottawa.
Wonderful. And to the 3 CITE members who are currently working in the field of transportation, engineering, and planning. Miriam, we'll start with you. If you could introduce yourself.
For sure. I'm Miriam Bello, and I'm located in Ottawa.
And Steve?
Sure, thanks. I'm Stephen Kemp, and I work for the regional municipality of Durham, which is eastern suburb of Toronto.
Great. And Joe?
Yeah, thanks, Kate. My name is Joe. I'm in Calgary, Alberta. I've been working with Stantec for 4 years.
Great. So that gives everybody a sense of the group that's with us today. So I'm just going to introduce each speaker before they do their 2 minutes, and we'll just go back and forth. So the purpose of the 2 minutes, of course, is just something of interest in the field, a little bit of types of typical jobs, and then we can see where the conversation takes us. So I think I signed you up first, Miriam, to go first in your talk. So I'll start you off with your introduction. So we have with us a transportation planning EIT from Dillon, also in Ottawa, with a civil engineering degree from University of Calgary, which I find interesting. So Ottawa, Calgary, and then I learned earlier, born in Russia. So different locales there. So your workday sounds like it's long-range transportation planning, policy development, transit, traffic. And also we have with us our vice president of the National Capital Section. So I sound like I'm in jest, but it's also important, right? That's that volunteerism and connection to CITE. So it's great that you're with us. So I'll pass it to you for your 2 minutes.
Thank you, Kate. That was a very grandiose introduction. Yeah, so I guess it's funny because I think about a lot of the work that I do, kind of masterminding a lot of the cities and communities in Canada. So I do work with a lot of sort of strategic type projects, usually like transit master plans or transportation master plans, really long range planning documents for entire urban mobility within communities. So I'm currently working on a transportation master plan for the city of Guelph in Ontario, as well as the city of Burlington, also in Ontario. And just last year, finished a project that was extremely cool for Transit Windsor in Windsor, Ontario, where we got to kind of blow up the transportation network and start from scratch and really involve a lot of community engagement. So and into developing kind of transit for the future there. It was a really cool opportunity to do that. So a lot of my work is that. It's a little bit of I'm a little bit of an enigma because my background is in civil engineering, and civil engineers have some stereotypes about not being able to write or not enjoying writing a lot, but I do a lot of policy development and writing documents and communication with the public, and it's something that I really enjoy. And then, of course, the occasional traffic study here and there from time to time, as well as project coordination. So really a mix of everything, and that's the beauty of consulting. You put on many, many hats.
My bias with your intro is I love all of that. So go be different, go be a different type of engineer. That's really awesome. And that private sector, and that, I love it. So thank you for that. Sarah, you're going to speak as our first job seeker. So Sarah is a graduate research assistant at the city's Health Active Transportation Lab at Fraser University. This is also the university where she completed her Master's of Public Policy. And I noticed from LinkedIn, you're on the Transportation 2050 Youth Advisory Council through TransLink, which I think is pretty neat. And I think you're one to watch in the shared micromobility space. No pressure on you, but from your research. So I think that's exciting. So I'm going to pass it to you for your 2 minutes.
Perfect. Thanks, Kate. Yeah, so I graduated with my Master's of Public Policy from SFU School of Public Policy in April. Kind of strange time to graduate, but it's actually been really a cool time to think about where I'm hoping to land a job next. So for my master's, I kind of made it my own. It's kind of a general degree, but I really have been in love with transportation and just how it impacts all of our lives on a regular basis. And so I made my Master of Public Policy program kind of a pseudo planning program. So focused on a ton of different projects, from rapid transit policy to cost benefit analysis of the Massey Crossing. And then I had to write a capstone thesis, and I chose to write that on active transportation, and specifically active school travel, and really getting parents on board with active school travel. At the same time, I've also spent the last year working with Dr. Meghan Winters at the city's Health and Active Transportation Research Lab at SFU. And there I was a research assistant on a TransLink funded program on the public perceptions of shared micromobility in Metro Vancouver, which has been a really cool project to work on because no one has looked at the public perceptions of shared micromobility in a region that doesn't have shared micromobility. And then that was also a challenge to try to talk to people in the region about shared micromobility when they maybe haven't experienced it, just kind of anecdotal stuff that people have seen on vacation or that kind of thing. So this summer, I've also continued working with Dr. Winters she's a built environment epidemiologist, so kind of getting that health perspective on cities and how that impacts our lives. Yeah, and that's about it. Excited to be here. Thanks, Kate.
Oh, that's great. And it's fun to hear how you took your schooling and what you're interested in and really turned it into something. So it is exciting. So the next speaker is Steve. Steve is the manager of traffic engineering and operations at the regional municipality of Durham. Extensive experience in the field of traffic engineering and intelligent transportation systems. And also, I learned past president of ITE Toronto section. So it's fun to think about those roots and who you've met and connected with through that role. So Steve, I'll pass it to you for your 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kate. Yeah, I'm currently employed with the region of Durham, but my entire career, at least so far, has all been public sector experience. I'm on my 4th different municipality. I started early on with the City of Toronto, and then moved to York Region, north of the city. A bit of time at a smaller local jurisdiction, and then now at Region of Durham. So yeah, public sector is a great opportunity in my view. Lots of options for graduates that are coming out. And my career has focused, pretty specifically on traffic engineering and even more specialized on the technology side. So traffic signal operations, traffic signal control systems. Right now, I'm working on deploying automated speed cameras and red light cameras for the region of Durham. So it's been an interesting combination of from a start in civil engineering. I would say very little of what I do most people would consider civil. A lot of electrical systems, computer type, computer design, networking. And as I go more and more into my career, it's more about managing people and building teams. So as public sector, as you move up, it's a lot of what I do day to day is enjoying mentoring others and seeing people come up through the ranks and what they're able to do in their careers in the future. So it's been an awarding journey, not necessarily where I thought it was going to go when it started. And ITE has been an important part of that. So getting involved in CITE early on when I started at City of Toronto was a huge advantage, and lots of options to network with others and meet others in the industry. So highly recommended way of getting your foot in the door.
Oh, that's really great. Thanks for sharing that, Stephen. I will say, of the municipal people I contacted, I really appreciate how fast you're like, yep, I'm in. It was really great, and it shows in your interest in helping out here. So thank you for that. So our next job seeker is Chris. So Chris is a recent graduate of civil engineering undergraduate program at Waterloo. He has previous internship experience in traffic modeling and planning, but I have to say I saw Vism in your CV, which is a hot commodity. So make sure you promote that. He has an interest in data collection and how it impacts modeling and planning. And he's also, Chris, you're that example of someone who saw the first episode and just wrote me and said, can I please participate? Which I think is great. So I'm glad you had sort of that courage to come here and just sort of share. So you have the floor for your 2-minute intro.
All right. Thank you, Kate. So I am Chris, and I'm also a recent, as Kate mentioned, a recent graduate from University of Waterloo Civil Engineering program. So as you may have known, at Waterloo, you are required to do some internships. So I've done a lot of internships over at traffic transportation engineering, and especially I've done a lot at the software Vism, and especially I want to mention one of the unique projects that I've done during one of my internships. And it was during, maybe Steve would know a bit more about it because it was at the region of Durham, and actually it was in the city of Pickering. They were proposing a really new development. It was around 2,000 units, and we're trying to get approvals for that. So it was located right in front of a proposed BRT corridor. And also, it was located right off the busiest off-ramp in all of GTA, which is great. 2,000 at peak hour, 2,000 cars an hour goes through that off-ramp. So it gets piled up really easily, right past to the, it fills right past to the off-ramp and goes right onto the highway. So the MTO will be very happy to see us trying to add more traffic onto that off-ramp. So at the same time, the MTO doesn't want us to develop that proposal, adding units. But at the same time, the region of Durham and Pickering also has a report coming out that says they want to densify that corridor. So we're in sort of really weird situation right in the middle, where the MTO is sort of right in the middle saying, why are you adding more cars? This is already really bad conditions, very auto-centric. At the same time, at the region of Durham and Pickering, they have a mentality of saying, we want to densify this place, this corridor, and we want to encourage development and bring pedestrians into that corridor so it's less auto-centric. So I had to really like try to balance during when I was doing that project, balancing the two stakeholders, the MTO and the Durham region. At the same time, you want to cater to the MTO's concerns about the traffic portion, but at the same time, you don't want to alienate the Durham region and the municipality's approval process, saying it's all about cars. So it was a very unique experience, and like I had to analyze between a lot of data points, like try to compare where people want to go. So it's like balancing the two. It was very interesting in that position.
Well, it sounds like that was a great internship job to have, or a project to experience. I mean, we talk about balancing priorities constantly, stakeholders constantly, modeling constantly, and then also the reality of sort of, juggling all the parties. So our next speaker would have done a ton of projects involving juggling a lot of different competing interests. So Joe is a sustainable transportation project manager at Stantec in Calgary. Before that, he worked for the city of Calgary, so has both that private and public sector experience, and also having gone to the University of Calgary. Joe, open the floor to you to share your sort of 2-minute introduction.
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, so hi, everybody. I went to University of Calgary myself, civil engineering, but like Steve and Miriam don't really do a lot of civil engineering. I think, so I did a lot of traditional traffic, analysis and early in my career in consulting, actually many consultants. It wasn't just a good fit for me as a junior engineer. So landed a job with the city of Calgary and stayed there 11, 12 years. And it was a really great foundation for understanding land use development. And then very quickly got into this kind of multimodal complete streets world, where my career has sort of been there for the last 10 years. I think there's pros and cons to both the public and private side. I wouldn't say bad things about either. I think it's great to have experience in both. And I think the foundation of the city really helped me, do really well in the public or the private side right now, just understanding their needs, and how to even reach out and ask for, do you guys need some assistance? Because I know how to do policy, I know how to do complete street guidelines, etc. But much like Miriam, I think she kind of covered what my expertise is really well. It's master planning. I delve a little bit into concept design. So we try to retrofit streets that are more multimodal, landscape architecture, features, things like that. An interesting thing is that, I knew at the city of Calgary that this multimodal and land use, working with planners, really goes hand in hand. And at Stantec, I've really reached out and have created a lot of great collaborations with our planners, landscape architects, to really do some great streets. We did a couple in Edmonton recently, and some things in Strathcona County beside Edmonton. So that's a gist. I love this stuff. I think it's kind of exciting now that you guys probably don't have to convince the world that cycling and all that's a good thing. I think that argument's been made over the last decade, starting with, maybe Portland. It's exciting times. And e-bikes, micromobility, that stuff's super exciting too.
There's no doubt of the opportunities, but it's fun to watch the themes in some of what we're talking about. So we're a bunch of engineering graduates that that move away. But so when we talk later about our jobs, we have to also think about like what advice for people trying to break into the field, because a lot of the job postings are very specific engineering tasks, right? And this happens sort of later in the career that you move away from it. And then also the planning lens too, as we think of CITE with engineers and planners. But don't worry, Umang, I haven't forgotten you. You're up next. So our last speaker is Umang. He's a Master's of Civil Engineering program at Carleton, so another person in Ottawa, but graduating this fall with an interest in transportation planning and design. And I think you hinted at GIS, which is an interesting element. And you're also someone who reached out to me and said, sign me up. I need a job after school. Let's do this. So I'm proud of you for doing that. And so pass it to you for your 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. And first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for sharing their wonderful experience with me, and especially Kate for arranging this meetup, because it's really helpful for an international student like me to get connected with the professionals in the industry. And as Kate already mentioned, I'm doing my master's in civil from Carleton and expecting to graduate this fall. So, but in the last winter, I did a project on transportation network analysis. So our main aim of the project was to present and analyze the network. So to do that, we were in talks with the city of Ottawa for the information regarding the traffic count, the speed limit, and the timing of signal as intersection. But so it took a lot of time for the city of Ottawa to give us the information, because it was a confidential, right? So our professor was already in talk with the city, so they provided us with a link, a My Vision link, and they also provided the link for the Open Data Ottawa. So, but we only got the traffic count from them, and we didn't got the other information. So what we did is, then after getting those information, we selected a 4x3 intersection in downtown Ottawa and started our analysis. So we created nodes, we created the zones, we developed our conflict areas, and further to do analysis, we developed origin and destination metrics. So as I'm also familiar with ArcGIS Pro, so with ArcGIS Pro and PTV Vism, I developed an origin and destination metrics in that, and further we evaluated simulation parameters with that, and we reached a convergence point. So after that, we did analysis on how vehicle travel time, what's the travel time for the vehicle, and performance evaluation of the entire network. So yeah, that was the mini project of transportation. Yeah, that's it.
That's great, and thank you for sharing that story with us. So honestly, when we start these, I don't know what the 6 people will talk about, so I just come up with some kind of theme. So a theme might be sort of multi-levels of government, right? Provincial, regional, city, and maybe, Joe, in Calgary, there isn't a regional level, but there would be regional municipalities within Alberta, but there's that sort of jurisdiction issues. There's different guidelines for different parties, and everyone wants their guidelines met. Then there's different policy and different priorities. So I just packaged that up in a big issue in a short list. So Steve, Miriam, Joe, one of you just take a little further in the sort of different levels of government and in your job having to navigate, or maybe Steve, I pick on you because you're at a regional level. So that's a different role, right? So we'll start there and then we'll see where we go.
Sure, I can try to cover that a little. So I've been fortunate to have the opportunity to both work at the regional level and also at the lower tier local municipal level. And actually, as a student, I worked at the provincial level too. So I guess I've seen all three sides, and it's complicated, and in some ways it's unfortunate because we're trying to build a transportation system for our customers that's seamless, and as users of our networks, people don't really care who owns the piece of infrastructure they're on, but it is what it is, and we all have to try to work together to make the best of it, and a lot of it is about building relationships with other people in the industry. So you have contacts at different levels of government. I find I'm way more successful when I have an opportunity to get to know these people as people and as friends, and we can maybe butt heads on a project, but then afterwards go out for a drink and talk about it. So it's not always, we're not always on the same page, and we have competing objectives sometimes. So Chris mentioned, municipalities wanting to intensify, which is a great, it's a good goal for those municipalities to have. And then you got to keep in mind at the provincial level when Ministry of Transportation staff are dealing with safety issues on Highway 401 and concerns about rear-end collisions at off-ramps. They have a different lens when they're thinking about what's going to happen when a 40-story condo building gets added to the mix. So we have different policy documents and guidelines and standards, and they don't necessarily all align with each other. So it's one of the challenges of working in a field that's so multidisciplinary, and the field is evolving, and the environment that we work in is evolving too. So those two things don't always line up at exactly the same place.
But a neat tip within what you just said for everybody is if you see a job posting at a regional level, maybe think about the types of things a regional government is interested in. And if you're applying at a city level, right? So a regional government, transit, and they might have authority over only certain roads. But that would be, if you could nail that in your opening with a few sentences, that would help you. But think about who you're applying to, because like at a municipal job at a regional level is different than a municipal job at a city level. So Joe, I see you're unmuted, so I'm going to go to you if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, sure. So I've been involved with actually doing a lot of different standards for municipalities and some counties. So, smaller clients, but it seems like although we have our national tax standards, everybody has a little nuanced difference in their specific specs or road standards. But all in all, they're pretty much the same. They're getting more multimodal. A lot of towns and cities, Edmonton, I think is, I would argue they're a bit ahead of Calgary with respect to their standards. We help with their 2018 guidelines, and that was a pretty interesting project. And even in the national standards, I think, one of the challenges is, there's traditional highway designers, road engineers, no matter where you go. So they exist in my group in Stantec. They existed at the City of Calgary. And I think it's important to define, have a common ground on the definition of safety. So safety to them is, we come from an engineering background, it's factor of safety. You build a building 3 times stronger than it needs to be. You build shoulders 3 meters wide in a similar fashion. And when you're getting into urban street design, they've taken a lot of those principles and brought them into their municipal guidelines. And, it's kind of our job to change that and say, well, no, now we're actually talking about pedestrians and cyclists. You're forgetting some of the other users when you think about safety. But to what Kate said about, think about the region. So the region, I guess, they're going to think more about goods movement. There's more truck percentages. So it's likely going to be less multimodal, but that isn't to say that there isn't, some regional pathways that connect towns and cities like they do in Europe. So, we need to get them thinking that way a little bit. It wasn't too long ago that a lot of, I think the province, they only had a sidewalk, I think, on your typical interchange. And now they're doing multi-use pathways as just part of their standard design to start with. So things are coming along. For job descriptions, I just wanted to say, if I don't get a chance later, recruiters cast a wide net. Nobody has the skill set in the job postings that are out there. So even if you have half or less than half of all the bullets, apply for it anyway. I don't quite understand. I don't write job descriptions that way, but sometimes they're just, 20 bullets, Pascal and Oracle and all kinds of other things. But I would, especially to Chris, mention data science. I think GIS and stuff is really an emerging field. I think I know at Stantec, in fact, that if they had that skill set, data science, they'd probably hire half a dozen today. I'm even thinking of sort of getting some, extra training for that, because we're kind of missing that skill set in-house. GIS, data analytics. We're collecting a lot of data, but we're not doing anything with it. And as we get into more multimodal emerging technologies and stuff, that's really important stuff to collect. So I think I've taken enough airtime there, Kate.
Yeah, and you opened the door. Now it's a challenge. If people want to contact Joe on LinkedIn with their amazing data science skills, he just opened the door for that. So that was brilliant. And thank you. And that's very relevant, right? But we're talking about, you just said it, the data's there, but we don't use it, right? Mm-hmm. So figuring out what that means. So I'm going to, Miriam, if you want to add in there, but also to the job seekers, if you get ready to ask a question, you can unmute yourself. That's when I know that you want to ask one. But Miriam, do you want to add to that before we pass it on?
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, it's funny. This is just a random story that came up when Joe was introducing himself earlier. And as we're talking about, even within, you know, the public sector, like the differences in the tiers of municipality and having different objectives and different goals. I had the pleasure of hosting a STEM night for the Boys and Girls Club of Ottawa last year. And one of the activities they had to do was create complete streets. And so we created little comics for them with different stakeholders. And this was the public being like, I have a wheelchair and I need a wider sidewalk. And, you know, I want to take the bus to work and I want it to be by my house. And you have a limited right of way. And we also gave them monopoly money and you had a fixed amount of money and every single thing cost. And I just made me laugh so much when I walked into the group that was working in the complete streets. And these were kids that were like 10 to 14. And, you know, they looked at me, they're like, this is impossible. Everybody wants everything and we don't have enough space and we don't have enough money. And I'm like, you are now a transportation planner. Congratulations, you get it. And so I think that applies for everything. And, you know, as we're talking about these different tiers of municipality, a challenge that I actually think of is also interesting to note is specifically for regions, and I believe counties in Alberta, and I'm not geographically as well everywhere else, also understanding that there are different contexts, right? Within a region, you can encompass within the same region or the same county, a really large urban center, as well as really large swaths of rural area. And because the types of trips that are in these different locations tend to differ by trip distance and the purpose of these trips, you have a group of people who are responsible for meeting the need of a really wide variety of contexts, right? So those are kind of other challenges, trying to figure out how do you not isolate a group and say, like, we don't care about your interests, we're just going to design for this part, or we don't care about yours. Well, you don't do that. And that's something that's, you know, being able to come up with compromises. Like, I know Kate laughed about how there's a bunch of us engineers on this call. We're not engineers, but I think a lot of that problem solving really does apply, and you're working in these conditions where that professional judgment is really necessary, regardless of what your background is, regardless of if your title is actually an engineer or not. So I think thinking about skill sets like that in our type of work, because the work affects people, and you are working with people, whether it be internal stakeholders or external ones, super important skill to have.
I love that, and you just gave me an opening. Absolutely, engineers deal with people, and we're still just as much an engineer. It's just funny that we don't sit at a computer anymore modeling or CAD or grading a catch basin and thinking about a sewer diameter. We might be out in the public more, but engineering and the human side is such a part of it. And same with monopoly money and complete streets games, or Lego, or whatever, however we want to do it. Umang, did you turn your mic off and you want to ask a question?
Yeah, actually, Joe already mentioned about that companies are already asking for more points, as Joe said that they are more skill set. That's 20. You should have 20 skill set. But I have also seen many job posting as when they mention as an entry level post, but they ask for 2 to 3 years experience. So how should we incorporate that? How should we do that? So that's my question. So.
Yeah, I think there's inconsistency sometimes with the years of experience and what they really need, and even the salary. So I would ask questions about it, and just because you don't have 4 years or 5 years, I don't think that's a reason not to apply. You might have the skill set they need, and until you kind of probe into a little bit further, you won't really know. So okay. I feel like anything's fair game.
I I'm going to add to that. I heard a great tip recently. The more you can reflect that you understand the job itself can make up for not having the years. So when a reader of your cover letter can say, oh, this person gets what they're going to be doing, it makes up for the lack of years. So that's actually one of the premise of this networking event, is to help people understand what the jobs are like. So you can slide that into your cover letter, some magical like tip or whatever that helps you get noticed, because I think that's what's missing a bit, is understanding what the job might be. So then why I started this was, well, how can we help people understand what the job might be? That's one part. The other part is actually finding out more about the position is hard if you don't have any connections. So the other reason for this initiative is if you see a job somewhere, you could maybe message somebody. They might have no authority. It's not about recommending you, but they could give you that little tip of what the city or the consultant is looking for that would give you the edge. So part of this is being able to ask, and it is very different in municipal and private. So I've spoken to some friends. They have to put 5 years experience in PEng because of some union agreement on the job posting, because all these jobs, 5 years experience PEng, that's a hot commodity. I mean, there's not a sea of people waiting for, like, people are seeking out that. That's not fair to, right? Especially to international students who don't have the PEng, but might have the years. But a city might have to say PEng for their requirements, where a consultant, and Joe, you could speak to this, Miriam, like there's maybe more flexibility in that kind of requirement. So I hope that helps you too. Go for it.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna add a little lesser known secret sometimes, and this is a bad habit and something that I see in a lot of larger companies. Sometimes, human resources creates the job postings, and especially for new grads, they tend to be copied and pasted sometimes, like sections of it can be copied and pasted, just because it's quite, I find that especially for a new grad, like people don't usually expect you to be like an expert on any one thing. There's an understanding that you're coming straight from school. And of course you have that foundation in your education, but nobody is expecting you to be a master at any particular software necessarily. And I think sometimes, like you see, there's just things that carry over from more standardized positions like that, just because, you're casting a wider net than perhaps for somebody, with 25 or so years of experience, where exactly kind of the specific experience you're looking for the role you're trying to fill with your technical hire. So in my experience, sometimes the job postings have like those 20 bullet points, as Kate had mentioned, but they're like super broad. Like they're just, transportation planner and just anything that a transportation planner might need as a qualification. Like you'll see two postings that have totally different titles for the posting, but they have the exact same bullet points for the requirements sometimes. So that's why I say, I 100% echo kind of Joe's points on, like, if you see something and you think it's interesting to you and you kind of have an understanding of maybe where that position is, or as Kate had mentioned, you reach out to somebody to maybe get that understanding, and maybe you don't hit all the 20 points or even the 15 points or whatever, but it's a new grad position and it seems like, it might be right. I would really strongly encourage you to apply for it anyway. Because again, it's kind of casting that wide net and seeing what comes in. And sometimes maybe somebody forgot to change, 3 years of experience to 0 to 3 or something like that. So
that's great. That's really great. I'd also say, I imagine in municipalities, they can't talk to you when a posting is active, but in private sector, we can do a lot more of our own recruiting and our own sort of getting to know people. So it's different in both sectors. So someone might not respond to you on LinkedIn if there was an active job from a city. So I don't know, Steve, is that something that you could speak to in that sort of job posting municipal sector?
Yeah, we do have those kind of blackout periods. So I would definitely recommend reaching out outside of a competition if you can, just to get to know people. But I thought of a story that I thought I might share that might help. But public sector, we definitely have less flexibility in hiring once the job descriptions are written and the postings are out and the qualifications are listed. A lot of times it's not even the hiring manager that's doing the screening. It'll be staff and HR that are going through resumes, and if you don't tick off all those boxes, I might never even see it. But if I know someone's resume is in that pile, and I know who they are, I can sometimes influence HR to let one go through that maybe doesn't check all of the boxes. And the example I thought of was we were looking for an engineer, and somebody with an environmental studies geography background, but really focused on transportation, had let me know that they had applied for this job, and in my mind they were the perfect candidate, but I knew HR would screen them out. I'd like to be able to tell you that at the end of the day I was able to convince HR to let them through. That didn't happen, but what I was able to do was it took a while, but we created a new position for this person. So we basically said, we're going to find a way to get this person into our organization, or if not this particular person, at least somebody like this person. So we changed some of the details in our job descriptions to broaden the pool of people that we were drawing from, because there's people with transportation backgrounds coming out of all kinds of different programs now. We're doing quite a bit of work in the area of automated vehicles and connected vehicles, and people with experience in that type of stuff are not coming through civil programs. They're a lot of times they're systems design, electrical engineers, computer engineers. So we're drawing from a broader source of applicants in our hiring. So definitely apply, and if you don't check all the boxes, and definitely reach out to try to connect with somebody in an organization if you can.
Great. So Sarah, do you have a question?
My question was kind of exactly that. Here in Vancouver, it seems like if you went to UBC SCARP, then you get the planning job. So I did a Master of Public Policy and then really tried to make it my own program. And I personally think I have a very unique skill set. Not to toot my own horn, but just sort of, I've been working a lot on how to sell that and how to position that within your cover letter, your resume, and interview process. But just sort of tips on how to manage getting discredited just because you don't have that traditional education that employers might be looking for.
So first tip is toot your own horn. So don't hesitate doing that. And LinkedIn is very powerful right now. You posted your thesis, that was smart, right? It just might get a few people looking at it. It might get in the right hands. I might share it, and then someone who loves shared micromobility might grab it. So do what you're doing. I know that doesn't answer the job hunt, but that's the right thing, is putting yourself out there. And also, I guess it's unpacked in sort of what people are talking about here. So there's a little bit in there about the planning profession versus policy, right? And a little bit about finding your way. But I guess it's just organizations find your way into groups that are connected in the field of your interest too, because there's so many, and we've talked about that before in Canada. But someone else, I don't need to talk all the time. Someone else want to help Sarah with her question? Joe.
Yeah, I had a couple points for you, Sarah. I think one is, in the cover letter, really try to sell yourself and do some research. So do some research around, just go on the web, figure out about the client, the region, act knowledgeable about, the transportation network that exists. And quite often, they'll have master plans or their future visions already up there. And you could just extract some of that and get that in your cover letter. That might, really catch their eye. The other thing is just kind of a personal story, but it's related. Is you may be trying to apply for something that's interesting you early in your career, but even if it's 2 or 3 degrees of separation from where you really want to be, go for it anyway. So we had a client. I was in the private side. It was the city of Calgary. I had seen a job. I knew I wanted to go to the city. I was about to apply for one job, but our client called us on the project we're currently working with them and said, "Are you happy there?" So I called him back, outside the office hours. And it wasn't really a fit. I thought it was development services and transportation. What they do is they take land use applications from applicants in and they review them. But he convinced me that it was a great foundation of getting to know counselors, politicians, planners, developers, you name it. And that foundation was great for me. I didn't really discover what I really want to do, which is right now, till about 8 or 10 years ago. So, it doesn't have to be a perfect fit now, but it can work its way there.
And I realized that I said you can join organizations. So I'm going to do one plug. Association of Pedestrian and Bike Professionals is less of a gatekeeper on exactly your credentials to get in, but the listservs in Canada, right? You start practicing like being visible on that is you'll meet a lot of cities. So we're wrapping up, but I want to talk about something with job postings for Chris. So a job posting says modeling, let's say buried in it, it says VISM experience preferred. So don't just on page 3 write VISM experience. Put that as easy and clear in paragraph 2 of that letter. So making someone have to find that thing, because that's a differentiator. So when you're reading that job posting, if you can see that thing that helps that job stand out, make it easy. Because a lot of people write the word AutoCAD, but they don't, and they might say skilled or even advanced, but make it easy that you walk into my firm and you can do CAD on day 1. That helps me see what you could be doing. If you could pick up Synchro on day 1, that helps someone see you in the job. So if you can put that stuff easy instead of just in a little list at the end of your CV, that helps. So I wanted to bring that one up in interpreting job postings, is that help us see you in the job, like what you could be doing from day 1. So we're wrapping up, but Chris, you deserve a chance for a question. So do you have one, or building on that?
I do. I'm just curious about when after your application, you say your job posting, you already put in your resume. Like sometimes the big companies, they sort of go through this, not necessarily some humans actually review your application or your resume or whatever. So I was wondering how some of that works, especially in bigger organizations that don't actually employ an HR to read all your application. It goes through a computer and somehow spits out a score. So I was wondering if you ever had experience with those things.
Yeah, we're tiny, so HR sends them to me. So I'm the machine that reads them all. But I can use that as a tip. I get so many and I'm kind, so I read. But you don't have much of my attention. Like I can't read novels, and it can't be buried in buzzwords like self-motivated and results-driven and all those keywords, right? Get rid of that stuff. Make it easy for me to see. Joe, Stantec, Dylan, Dylan as a corporation. I don't know, Miriam, if you can answer that one.
Yeah, no, I think we're not that big. So Dylan's under about 1,000 people. So it's kind of a similar process. To be honest, I can't speak to. I don't know if HR pre-screens them themselves or if they use something. But usually, for example, I was hiring a co-op student, I would get all of the stacks, and very similar to Kate. I think as much as you try, I do try, if I think somebody put in an effort, I do try to review it. I don't have a lot of time to be reading novels or to be looking for something specifically. So if there are buzzwords that you want to highlight that are very pertinent to the job posting, put them there so I can kind of scan them and see them, and that automatically piques my interest.
Kate, we in Durham, we use some of those third-party tools for certain positions. But my experience with them has been, I think they get paid based on how many resumes they send us. So they tend to screen in more people than they screen out. So if you have the word transportation on your resume somewhere, we're probably going to get it. So I wouldn't worry about one of those third-party systems kind of filtering your resume out. It'll get through.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up, but Joe, you just put a note up there. You would have read the resumes that came through your desk when you were at the City of Calgary?
Yeah, I mean, I would just scan probably cover letters very quickly because of, what everybody's talking about here, Steve and others. You could miss like a check mark, or it's not quite the format or whatever, and lose it. And I don't want to lose the potential right fit. So I would scan everything. The manager has that right to look at everything. I requested it. So yeah, it's just, sometimes the system can screen you out. So like Kate said in the beginning, if you can somehow get through to that person and just get your name in front of them through a person, say, Chris is applying, then that's a step up, just that it doesn't get screened out accidentally.
So that's the perfect comment to end on. What my hope is with these episodes is, like, Chris and Sarah and Umang, you can contact someone from a different one and say, I was on number 3, but you're the job I want. Like, so you can use this to figure out who people are, and people can do that with this call, right? And we can, in that way, kind of domino effect of opening up some doors, because everyone here can't be thinking, well, how do I contact them in advance if I don't know who on earth they are? Because HR at blank, blank, blank is not the easiest, but obviously we're saying that there's some value in networking. So what a great episode. I could keep talking to you forever. So thank you. You guys were really, really, really wonderful today. And I thank you for your time.